Yeah. Okay, the Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment will come to order this 17th day of April, 2025. The time is 6:30. Roll.
Ann Torrey, absent. Ray Mass.
Here.
Eileen Hogan.
Here.
Ben Euro, absent. Sharon Lee.
Here.
Vincent Light.
Here.
Paul Caca.
Here.
Anna Cruz, absent. Amanda Califano, absent. Eugene Horowitz
Here.
and Chris Hayden, absent.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been posted at Borough Hall, filed with the Borough Clerk and mailed to the Asbury Park Press at 2 River Times. This meeting is being tape recorded, and in the event the applicant uses the services of the court reporter to transcribe the tapes, the board requires a copy of the transcript. We will break at about 8 p.m. for deliberation of testimony heard thus far in the conference room on the first floor. The public is invited to attend. However, discussion between board members and the public is not permitted at that time. No new cases will be heard after 9 p.m. The Red Bank Zoning Board of Adjustment has maintained a policy cutoff hour of 9:30 for its hearings. Any applicant not heard this evening will be carried over to the next scheduled meeting. Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a couple administrative matters to take care of. Regular meeting minutes, April 3rd. Motion to approve.
I'll approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Okay, we have a resolution of approval for 302 River Road.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, good evening. That was an application approving use variance approval for a for a conversion from mixed-use residential / professional office use to a two-family dwelling. And the resolution recites the very intense and good faith and civil debate we had regarding what's the difference between a mother-daughter structure, what's the difference between a two-family structure, what do the regulations allow, what were the applicants actually proposing. The application after that good faith debate was approved by a majority of the board. And the conditions of note were, in conjunction with the approval and the issuance of any building permits, the applicant shall knowingly, perpetually, intentionally, and officially abandon any professional office use associated with that site. A minimum of 10 off-street parking spaces are going to be maintained. At least 2 of those 10 parking spaces are going to be specifically reserved and dedicated for that second dwelling. No further expansion or intensification of the two-family absent further approval from the zoning board, and that the applicants need to obtain a C of O, certificate of occupancy, before any occupancy of that unit. Signed resolution gets forwarded to the tax office. They have to obtain any necessary outside approvals. And I think the other thing that I left blank is you're gonna, if you're okay with this, we're gonna have our typical condition that unless otherwise agreed or otherwise extended by the zoning board, the within approval shall be deemed abandoned within 2 years from adoption of the within resolution or any agreed upon extension unless the applicants obtain the building permit. So, Mr. Chairman, if it's acceptable to you and the board, we can adopt that as modified.
Okay, somebody like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion. I'll second.
Ray Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
and Eugene Horowitz.
Yes. Okay, we have a resolution of approval for 50 Hilltop Terrace.
Mr. Chairman, that was a resolution that was previously distributed. That was bulk variance to construct and install several improvements to a site containing an existing family home. And you'll recall it was construction of a garage, construction of an addition, second-story addition, second floor balcony, and extension of the driveway. And that was on Hilltop Terrace, which is sort of a unique feature given the slope. And the application was approved. The only variances that were needed were associated with it was a front-facing garage.
Yes.
Whereas the ordinance requires the garage to be oriented toward the side or the rear. And then the conditions of note were no utilities in garage except for electricity, OA compliance and affordable housing, comply with Shauna's memo, review memo, and the materials appropriately match and complement the existing structure. That was the gist of that application.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor? Oh,
No.
I got a roll call, sorry. Ray Mass,
Yes.
Eileen Hogan,
Yes.
Sharon Lee,
Yes.
Vincent Light,
Yes.
Paul Cagnon,
Yes.
and Eugene Horowitz.
Yes.
Okay, new business. We have 232 South Pearl Street.
All right, and Mr. Chairman, as I'm gonna say as the team comes forward, but the team's already there. So what we're gonna do, a couple of procedural things which we'd like to address. Hey, perfect timing. So why don't we just announce?
Yes. 36.
Chris Havens has just shown up for the board, so.
So, Mr. Havens, we're just about to start this, so you're absolutely entitled to vote and participate. So, this is a Jacob Morales application, 232 South Pearl Street. So we were here roughly January 2nd, 2025. And at that time, the meeting was adjourned. So that I think you, Kevin Asadi, you were gonna take some of the comments and concerns that some of the board members expressed and come back. So we have sort of a unique procedural thing here that we sort of talked about earlier today. That given the fact that it's been such a long time, relatively, and given the fact that there have been some potentially significant revisions, and given the fact that you have renoticed, and given the fact that there might not necessarily be a quorum or large quorum of board members to participate tonight, because they were not necessarily available for the first hearing and they didn't review the transcripts. There was a discussion as to whether or not you wanted to, or you were okay with just starting all over from scratch. Are you okay with that or want to do that?
Yeah, I think that's for the best, and I know that you see a lot of applications up here, and you don't necessarily have them all memorized for months at a time, so we would be very happy to.
Okay. So thank you for that. And towards that end, is there anyone here who had any questions, comments, or concerns regarding the sufficiency of the supplemental or additional notice they received? Don't see any. The board secretary, the acting board secretary and I reviewed the notice and found everything to be in order. So it'd be my humble opinion that we have jurisdiction to proceed. So what we'll do.
Just a point of order, sorry. I recused myself from the first hearing because Mr. Morales, 2 houses away, his father is a neighbor and friend of mine.
Okay,
So I didn't listen to that, so I don't want to do this. I can't do this one either.
sure. Right. If you recuse yourself from the first one, you should probably recuse yourself from this one too. So thank you for the,
About the number.
no problem. And I think we'll just note that because I think under our ordinance, we just have to put that in the resolution. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Sorry for making you come.
No, I didn't.
And so what we'll do is let's swear in 2 of the more awesome women in the world. So we're gonna swear in Shauna Ebanks, who is our Director of Community Development and a planner. And we're gonna swear in Jacqueline Derman, who is our board engineer. So Shauna and Jacqueline, if you could raise your right hands, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide, to the extent you provide any, will be the truth, the best of your knowledge, to help you God?
Yes.
Okay, let the record reflect that both individuals have been sworn. And what we will do is mark into the record what we as a board have before us. So A1 is the zoning application dated August 28th, 2024. A2 is the zoning denial letter dated July 12th, 2024. A3 is a survey prepared by Morgan Engineering that's dated May 30th, 2024. A4 is the plans prepared by Edward O'Neill of O'Neill Architecture and Planning, and that was dated August 15th, 2024, revised January 21st, 2025, consisting of 5 sheets. And then A5 is going to be the T&M Associates Review Memorandum, And that's dated March 17th. Actually, it is March 17th, 2025. And I think that's all that we have, correct, Kevin? I think. If we're missing something, we'll get it. So towards that end, good evening, Mr. Asadi, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. So as discussed, we were here on January 2nd, and before that, Mr. Morales, Jacob,
Bring the mic.
oh. Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta talk
Just bring it all
right
the way
into it.
through.
You got right into it.
So, Mr. Morales, seated to my right, was previously the applicant for, a similar application on Berry Street. He had a vacant lot, had designed a home that he wanted to use for his family. And, it was an isolated, undersized lot. And unfortunately for, Mr. Morales, the neighboring property owner did, assert their desire to purchase the property. And they purchased it for fair market value, and with that, it kind of died on the vine. So Mr. Morales resumed his search for a suitable piece of property for him to deliver a house for his mom. And he found this one at 232 South Pearl. It's also a vacant, isolated, undersized lot. It's 27 feet across by, I forget the depth.
Jack.
27 by 100. It makes it more narrow than the ordinance requires 50-foot width, and this lot only exists at 27 feet. The ordinance also requires 4,500 square feet. This undersized lot, 2,686.
I'm sorry, 2000,
686,
and what's required in the zone?
4,500.
Thank you.
So it goes without saying that this lot is a challenge. And with that, the architect, Ed O'Neill, was tasked with designing a home for this lot that would be suitable for, the needs of a small family, while also respecting the existing character of the neighborhood and the zoning standards as much as possible. When we did come here on January 2nd, we presented a proposal that complied with rear and front yard setbacks, building height, lot coverage. At that time, the plan also included two parking spaces. And those spaces would have been in the front yard area. So we heard several comments from members of the board, and we took notes. Some of the comments were to reduce the height, reduce the size, to bring the house closer to the front yard. Even though that creates a vanity condition, it was deemed maybe more desirable to line up with the other houses on the street. In doing so, the two parking spaces that we originally proposed for the front yard area were eliminated. And as a result of that, there is no off-street parking. So that triggers a variance that we didn't need before. So we noticed for that variance. We also noticed for a front yard setback variance that, based on the board's comments, we moved the house up, which happens to be in the front yard setback area. So because of that, we noticed for a new variance for a front yard setback. And like I said, we made substantial modifications to the proposal. We also reduced the overall floor area of the home by almost 300 square feet. Those of you who were here at the last hearing might also recall the owner of 230 Pearl did attend and did voice some objection. In the last day or so, I contacted Pat Mena, counsel her, and Mr. Mena contacted me. And, they essentially withdraw their objection, but what they asked me to convey to the board is that we be allowed to keep the same building, but slide it a little bit further back, namely 7 feet. And the reason for that is, property owner's view, there's a window over there, and he would prefer if the window had a view of. So we told Meta that we would express that to the board and explain to the board that we would be happy to do that if the board were inclined to have us modify the plans accordingly. At the same time, Mr. Meta and his client understand that if the board were inclined to approve it the way we've presented it, because it does correspond to the board's preferences that were expressed at the last hearing, so we moved the house up for that reason. If the board were inclined to approve it where we have it located, they understand that that's something they have to accept. So they're okay with that, but we're letting the board know on the record that if you wanted a solution that would satisfy the neighbor and also work for us too, we would agree to a condition that the house be sited 7 feet further from the street than what is shown in front of you today.
So you're proposing, if, just for the record, you're proposing, if the board isn't so inclined, a front setback of
19.
19 feet even?
No.
Got it.
And of course, there would still be no driveway or front yard parking of any sort if the house were moved back. I just want the board to be perfectly clear on that.
So no front yard parking.
Why no parking? If you're moving the house back, don't you gain space that parking space?
Yes, our original proposal was to take advantage of the space that we had and put cars in the front yard. However, it was expressed by some of the board members that this is not preferred at all. They'd rather see no front yard parking.
No parking.
And taking into consideration, I think the common knowledge among all of you was that there is no real parking issue on this street as well as that street. It was preferable not to have parking. Very happy to see us comply with that. So we were glad to do it.
We didn't allow it to do, other applicants too.
The next door neighbor also originally had a complaint about the side yard setback. Have they changed their?
Yeah, because, we tried to work with them on that, and I don't know. Is Ed here? No, I don't see Ed. We're missing Ed at the moment, but Ed will be able to explain why we were unable to increase the side yard setbacks from an architectural, code standpoint. It became very problematic. And it'd be great if you were here. I could tell you, and you'll get his testimony on it later, but if we narrow the building, we lose a bedroom. So it's even narrowing the building 1 foot makes a massive difference to the utility of the home.
But my question was about the neighbor's original complaint on the side yard setback. And it's been withdrawn. Yeah.
And the purpose of sliding the house back accomplishes what her concern was in the first place, because it allows whoever's living in the house to look out their kitchen window and see vast space rather than a new neighbor. Because of where the kitchen window is located in proximity to the front yard.
And just for the record, how many bedrooms will the house have now? And you said no driveway?
Correct. In the T&M letter, there was a comment that we should remove the curb cut and complete the sidewalk. And that's something the applicant will do.
Your mic.
Who, I know you had said before your mother, are you gonna live there? Who's gonna live there? Cause I know you had said your mother before.
You know what, we'll just swear you in. If you could just, because we're starting over, if, Mr. Morales, if you could just state your name, please.
Jacob Morales,
And Morales is MOR.
ALES.
Okay, if you could just raise your hand. Do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the best of your knowledge to help you God? Okay, and just, before you answer Ms. Hogan's question, just, you're the owner of the property? And how long have you owned it roughly? About 1 year? Okay, thank you.
I just a couple of questions. Cause it said it was your mother, but I don't know. Today, I just said it was you, said it was your family.
Well, no, it's for my mother.
It's for your
Yeah,
mother.
well, he said family because we're gonna have people coming over sometimes and.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I've been there. I will, make it possible, it's gonna be for my mom.
Okay, and my other question is, and I don't know anything about building square feet and, all the
Oh, we're all.
nuances of it, but, I'm just wondering, like, these lots you had are all like really undersized and stuff, and you're being, your home for the lot. And I know you said, that you cut off, but I know my daughter just sold a 1,490 square foot home that had 3 bedrooms, they had 3 kids. She and her husband lived there for like 12 years. My thing is, I know the side setback, everything, it's still like a big house for that lot. And I know you just said that a bedroom gets cut off if you take away something. But I'm just wondering why the house couldn't go back further to make up the square footage. Then the side, because it's an odd lot, it is an odd lot, but I'm just saying, I know 3 bedrooms can fit in a smaller home.
The architect was asked to look into doing that,
Mhm.
but he informed us that if the building were to narrow any further, we lose a bedroom. So it's not about the, but not being able to have the extra bedroom.
What about going back instead of wide going back? Like you came in more. You know what I mean? It's the side's still the same. It came in more. Why not go back more? Because it looks like a long lot of property. Oh,
Not more than an hour and a half ago, so he told me he might be really close.
Okay.
Yeah, past close right now.
okay,
But he'll be able to answer.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
But yeah, it is important to just reiterate that the neighbor who was impacted by that side yard withdrew, and like I said, they were pleased and satisfied with the proposal of sliding the house a little bit further back.
Can you provide testimony on the other neighbor and whether there would be an impact to that neighbor?
Like in, based on Google Images and common, I guess, evidence that everybody can see, and you can testify to that, Jacob. Let me ask you a couple questions about that. So we were just talking about 230 South Pearl Street. If you're looking at the subject property, 230 South Pearl Street, would that be on the right or the left?
Based on that, it'll be on 230, be on the right.
Just
Be on the right.
bring that mic because when I have to write the,
Right, I don't think this mic is on.
It's on, but you have to get real close. No? Maybe not.
the dummy.
Maybe not, yeah.
I know you guys sound a lot.
Netflix prop.
Yeah.
There we go. That sounds better.
Can we just move over to that table?
It's strong. That's the plug is good. Which we'll find out.
Okay, so we were just talking about 230 South Pearl Street, which was the neighbor who had previously come and raised a question. Is 230 to the left or the right of the subject if we're looking right at it?
To the right.
To the right. And so the question that was just asked was concerning the neighbor to the left.
Correct.
And as as for the neighbor to the left, can you tell us about how that property is oriented?
Yes, so there's actually a piece of land that's.
Just bring that mic then.
There's actually a piece of land that's actually vacant, literally right next to the lands that I purchased. And there's a parking lot, a business on the other side, so it's literally nothing there. Nothing. So it's not gonna disturb anybody, it's just literally an open piece of lot. I was actually looking to see if I could purchase that little piece, but I didn't know who's the owner of that little piece of
They
land.
didn't respond when we wrote them?
You know, and Kevin, just for the record, at the last hearing, because we're starting over, you did send the buy sell letters to the affected neighbors.
I did, and those were entered into evidence.
So we'll mark them in again. I think last time they were A7, now we're gonna mark them as A6. And that they were the buy sell letter saying, hey, will you be willing to buy my property or sell me some of yours or all of yours?
There's certified letters based on the tax map and the property owners list to each of the adjacent property owners offering the sell our lot to them or alternatively purchase excess land from them. And there were no responses, at least no serious responses to those offers.
And just what was the date of those letters, if you know offhand?
September 11th. I can specify those were sent to Anna George at 68 Hippocott Avenue in Long Branch, to DR 48 Wallace LLC, care of Immigrant Mortgage Company, 333 Broad Street, Suite 201, Red Bank, New Jersey, to 17 November LLC, care of McCarter and Higgins, 48 Dr. James Parker Boulevard, Red Bank, New Jersey, and to Mark Allen and Cynthia Allen at 54 Dr. James Parker Boulevard, Red Bank, New Jersey.
All right, so we'll collectively mark them as A6A, A6B, A6C, and A6D. And Shauna, you have them in the file from?
I don't know.
Yeah, why don't you give us just.
You want a copy or these your originals or?
You can send me a copy tomorrow.
Not tomorrow, we're off.
Oh, yeah.
So there are no neighbors objecting at this point?
I don't know if anybody.
That you're aware of.
Of that, but, I know the most affected neighbor and the neighbor who voiced, strong objection in the last hearing. As I said, she was counseled by Pat, and he and I.
Okay, so none that you're aware of?
Right.
Thank you.
Are there any trees being removed?
No trees are being moved.
And just for the record, just the neighbor that Pat Mena is representing, was that, I know she testified, that was Anna George?
Yeah, Anna George.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like there are trees on the lawn.
No, not much.
Are they gone?
And we decided to start on the top for the benefit of those who ain't forgotten what we talked about the last time, and there was some ordinance we did the last time. So let me show you.
All right, good evening and welcome. If you could just state your name.
Edward W. O'Neill Jr.,
And business address,
65 Monmouth Street, Redneck,
and you're testifying today in your capacity as a licensed.
architect and planner.
Okay, do you swear that the information and testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, best of your knowledge to help you God?
I do.
All right, and just as Kevin indicated, for a variety of reasons, we started fresh as if the first hearing never happened. So you might want to touch base on but you, just for the record, your licenses and certifications are current and up to date and in good standing.
Yes.
Okay.
He said no trees will be removed at all. It looks like there's a bunch of trees there. Well, I'm missing something.
The only trees are in the back corner of the lot, they wouldn't be.
Can I show you what your map shows?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a little bush.
Yeah.
Are we talking about?
This tree here.
Yeah, I don't think that's his line.
It might be next door.
Yeah, he shares the gravel, right?
So this is it. And this is Google.
This shrub has been removed.
What about these trees?
I believe those trees are on the neighboring property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's that, remember, it's a very thin lot.
Yeah,
This is the-
that's why I was kind of confused on where it began and where it ended.
Yeah, those are on the rear lot of the.
A lot for that bigger house.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, okay, so
You
there's
show me
this
everything.
house. That's their tree.
There.
That's like a bush, I guess. Looking at the other one.
It was?
You named this bush down here?
Oh, yes, okay. Right, okay.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
It's for the guy.
And for the sake of completeness, to respond to Tina's letter, you have a copy of the revised letters?
I'd like to look at yours.
Sure.
Yeah, Mr. O'Neill, there was one of the board members was concerned about that you made the building shorter, but now you didn't narrow it any, so the setbacks are,
Side setbacks are the same as.
but there's a concern because they're well below what's required.
Yes, in order to make it a 3-bedroom house, which is my client's desire and the family that's moving into its requirement, you need to have 2 bedrooms in the back that are next to each other. And they are less than 10 feet wide. Roughly 9.5 by 12. And when you get smaller, it becomes a kind of a difficult thing to furnish.
Couldn't you stack them? You're looking at the plans instead of up and down, you're doing up.
Second floor plan and of the new plans, the revised plan.
You're not under, instead of like this, like that.
Oh, you're saying, can we turn them 90 degrees?
Sure.
Well, you can, but then the second floor is bigger than the first floor by quite a bit.
So are you saying there's like can't have
If you're
a,
going to change the layout of the house, the first floor is going to be impacted as well.
then so you're saying that the second floor should cantilever over?
I'm just saying, you could change, I mean, if you're worried about making the bedrooms narrower, instead of stacking them so that each becomes narrower, put them side by side.
But then you make the house bigger.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, it's definitely gonna make the house
Yes.
larger.
you would make it narrower, but larger to accommodate the 3 bedrooms.
So the length would be longer.
But we would have better setbacks on the sides.
Yeah. I was the one that asked, I had said before when you weren't here about the size of the house, because these lots that, Jake is buying are small lots, putting the house on and saying it was longer, but You know, I was just saying, I just said, my daughter just sold a 1,494 square foot home with 3 beds. It's a very small lot, and you know, it's small, it's more of a, you know, those old railroad homes you'd say going
Yeah,
like that way, you know what I'm saying, like those. But still, it's 300 and whatever square feet left, and it still has 3 bedrooms, and they had 3 kids and they just moved from there. So I'm just like, I just feel like these houses, they're very small lots that are purchased and the homes are really big on them. That's what's coming before us.
And again, but it depends on the lot's configuration, so here, the lot is very narrow.
Right.
Again.
And as to the overall size of the building, it's also, I think, worth noting that we do comply with your max lot coverage standards. So the idea that the house is too big for the lot, and I understand where you're coming from because of the narrowness, but it's very difficult to design a house, and I think, you know, Ed can testify about this, to conform to the narrowness of the lot. And we're not trying to make that bigger, we're trying to make it smaller. And we did do that by more than 10%. But in order for this house to be utilized in a normal fashion, this is what he came up with, while still reducing the size of the structure, which, you know, we did think that this was an important objective for the board, for the neighbors, and, you know, so that's what Mr. O'Neill was tasked with doing in between meetings. So it's the best I can answer, but on a narrow lot, it's, you know, that's where the hardship comes in. And, you know, we can provide testimony about hardships, but we're not trying to make the house bigger. And we conform with your lot coverage standards, which help control the size of structures on lots. And we conform by, you know, we're not just under, we're under. So I want to make sure that the board, you know, at least has the opportunity to appreciate that as well.
So my fear is that if I take Mr. Light's suggestion, I think we're gonna be over the 35%.
You couldn't be because you're making it narrower while at the same time making it longer. So you could have the same overall footprint.
With all due respect, that's a little simplistic, because what happens is when you do that, the circulation becomes greater. And so you automatically add square footage to the house because it's simple that if you have 2 buildings and they have 1 entrance here, if you do this, now you create a hallway to get to the back bedroom. And that automatically makes the square footage rise. So it's gonna be bigger. If we try to stack the rooms, as you're saying, in this shotgun fashion, the house is going to get larger in square footage. I can almost guarantee that.
I have trouble visualizing that, maybe because in my mind, the hallway would be either one side or the other, not in the middle.
That's inherently inefficient from a circulation standpoint. That's why if you go into the buildings like, I know they're not residences, but hospitals, things like that, the corridor is always in the middle. It's in the middle because that's the most efficient way to double load. They call it double loading the corridor. It is a car parking lot. Pull into a parking lot, there's parking spaces on both sides. That's
Right, I'm just trying to come up with a solution that provides better setbacks.
But then it increases the lot coverage. And then we're trying to stay under the lot coverage to keep the house within the guidelines of the ordinance, which is 35%, we're at 30, I believe, 2%. I think we're going to exceed that 3% if we take that advice. I think we're going to.
Those guidelines, and that's not all the other one.
And
I realize you're keeping those guidelines of lot coverage, but you're all over the place with setbacks.
Well, the rear setback.
What's the difference?
Well, the front setback was in response to the board's
Right,
comments last meeting.
right.
So that's why we have a front yard setback issue. The original proposal, the front yard was met the setback requirement. And the board thought that we provide 2 parking spaces, side parking spaces, which was also in the ordinance. And so we set the building to those standards. It was requested for us to look at removing the parking and moving the building closer to the street, which would be similar to the buildings to the north. So we responded. We made comment that we knew that it was going to cause 2 more variances. And what we're communicating to us is that was okay, because we thought it was more important to reduce the height of the building, which we did, and to reduce the size of the building, which we did by almost 300 square feet. So the variances that are added, which you just mentioned, were caused by that discussion. When we first applied, the only setbacks were the sides.
Can I,
But you didn't improve on those setbacks.
Pardon me?
You weren't able to improve on those setbacks.
Side setbacks.
There's still 3.3 feet on the sides.
Right, but we had a conforming front yard setback. And we had a lot coverage.
And it's the lesser of one.
I just want to, for clarification, we're talking about setbacks and I think, and I thought the only question was about the side setbacks. But then Ray, it sounded like you had concern about other setbacks or,
Those sides.
okay, because you said like all over the place and that kind of.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so it's just the sides.
Yeah, I thought you wanted
Yeah.
to revisit the.
So I have a follow-up question that obviously I'm looking at the proximity map and a lot of the properties are very narrow.
Yes.
Is this typical 3-foot setbacks? Are there others that have setbacks that's smaller and already there?
Lot next door has less than 3 foot on its north side, so.
Okay, so this wouldn't be different
No, it's similar.
for the area.
The day when these houses were built, it was really to be able to walk through the house, walk from the front to the back without crossing onto a neighbor's property, which are about 3 to 4 feet.
Okay,
The building code requires at least a 3-foot setback in order to have any windows on it.
okay.
So rather than having 2 blank walls by going 3.3 feet, we can have a certain percentage of the wall windows, which we meet that standard. So that's why it's 3.3, not 3 or some other crazy number. It's a little bit of a cushion to not have, when things actually be built too close to the property.
Where I was coming from was, are the setbacks less than others? Is it unusual for the neighborhood? And it sounds like, no, that's
No.
not typical for a lot of that nature in that neighborhood.
The only time in the neighborhood where it's greater is when they have a driveway that runs
Okay.
back, and that's not
Thank you.
really everything.
Can I just interrupt though? The house to the right, house on the north, that's got a 7-foot setback per your plans. Is that what you're referring to?
On the opposite
The other
property
side.
line, it's like probably less than a foot.
The one facing, you mean the one facing the street, so the one on Berry? So
No.
the side that's on Berry?
2 houses that are there that are to the immediate north, the first one and the second.
So if we're looking at your lot to the right.
Yeah,
So according to your plan, it says 7.1 feet.
But we're referring to the opposite side.
So one,
We're referring to the opposite side. It's not shown on our plan because it's relating to the opposite side of 230 South Pearl.
that's the one where it's virtually on top of the side, the second one. This.
So I have a question.
okay.
So that is typical.
Ed, what is the distance from the last step riser on the adjacent property? There's like, looks like be like an entrance or side entrance on the adjacent house. And then there's like a little landing, then there's 2 steps down with a railing that I wanted to know what the distance from that last riser on the staircase, exterior staircase would be to the house.
Mr. Gagno, if I may, just notify the board as to the discussions with Mr. Mena's client, the owner of that property. My client has agreed that they are going to reorient that stoop for that property owner as part of our project.
Yeah.
So that those steps are going to land in a direction towards the street. In order to alleviate the problem that it looks like you identified.
Okay, so, still though, what is the distance? What would the distance be then from the bottom riser to
0.9?
the property line?
Well, it's 0.9 now, but of course, if you move the stair, it's all stairs that are in. If you move the stair to the front, it's going to be probably close to 4 feet.
Close to what?
4 feet. From the edge of the platform of the stoop to the property.
So instead of the
On their
steps,
property.
instead of the steps walking down to the side yard, the steps are going to orient towards. Now you're walking down towards the street, so the long run down is moving towards the street rather than.
Right, so he's saying he's changing those steps to face the street.
Yes.
Because as it is, you have to
So-
technically trespass. a
Right.
client's property to
Unless you
get
have
into the other
really
property.
small feet.
Well, that's what I was getting to. So,
I mean, technically.
or if you were to put a fence up to delineate the two lots, how is the neighbor gonna get around that staircase and get to her yard? So is that problem taken care of by virtue of changing the step?
And that was an important part of the discussion that I had with Mr. Meta concerning that.
Yeah, I mean, I also would be concerned about a 6-foot fence running down the property line so close to the house. Did the neighbor address that? Has that been addressed or no, she's not concerned with that?
Neither side was concerned with that.
I mean, should we be concerned with that?
We should be concerned about it. We don't have a fire marshal.
Yes, I'm gonna set a precedent.
Yeah.
Well,
How, is it building to building? I'm trying to do the math here.
10 feet.
Oh, 10?
Building to building.
Seemed like 6, 7, the way you were saying 4 over on one side.
It's six-
What is he from his setback to the next door neighbor?
6.7 is the neighbor and.
To the
we're-
house, not to the stoop.
No, yeah, that's what I meant, building to building, like, you know, passing the
House.
toothpaste across the.
10 feet.
Okay, so it's 10 feet between.
Which if you look at the neighborhood, you have somebody driving a car through there, it's about 10 feet.
Okay. And I have a question, and it was off of what you said with a side staircase and putting like a bedroom here, and a bedroom there. What's the difference to make it again narrower and longer? If you put the staircase oriented to the side, like when you walk in to the side up there, put the bedrooms that way to make it long, you know, the house longer, not wider. Do you know what I'm saying?
But the circulation is going to get longer than it is now, so therefore the house is going to get larger. The square footage is going to rise. And my concern is that we're going to then eclipse the 35% building coverage regulation, which is a far more onerous variance than a setback variance.
Let me ask you a couple of questions, just so I know that, the focus of this conversation has been about those side yard setbacks. If you put on your, and Mr. O'Neill, do we need to qualify him as a planner? Was that done at the last hearing?
Yeah, I mean, you,
We're gonna do all of that.
You asked me both.
Right.
Answered yes.
I have an architect and a planner, correct?
And he's been qualified? as-
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Chairman, we,
yeah, he's been before us a number of times, so we know his qualifications and we will accept his testimony.
Okay, thank you. Ed, as to, let's think about the negative criteria and, you know, is there substantial detriment if the variance were to be approved? Specifically with respect to not the neighbor we keep talking about, but the neighbor on the other side. Can we talk about that first?
Sure.
Okay.
The neighbor to the other side, the house faces Dr. Sparta Boulevard. So it has a very long rear yard that abuts this property. So it's, I mean, it's gotta be over 50, 60 feet to the house. So it's a wonderful piece of lawn that this house would look at. And what we've tried to do in the design of the house is take advantage of that open space because it's never gonna be closed up. And it's also the side of the house that gets the sun all day. So we oriented windows and rooms to get as much sun as possible, which makes for a nicer house, but also, if you jump into like the Red Bank master plan and things, it also is an energy saving device. because you can get light into the house in the winter, and that will warm the house, that reduces heating costs. And we've also put windows on the other side so that there's air that blows completely through. So there's through ventilation, and the through ventilation reduces cooling costs. So it's one thing we took advantage of. We looked at the property, Mr. Morales bought it. We said besides the fact it was undersized, it had wonderful orientation.
And because of that orientation, do you think that the benefits substantially outweigh any detriments associated with the side yard setback on that side?
No, I don't think there's any detriment at all. And again, I think the positive criteria are the issues with the master plan and issues with sustainability.
And
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? But we're removing that benefit from the adjacent property though, right? Aren't we offsetting your benefit now? Isn't it offset by the fact that the adjacent property now is losing that sunlight, isn't it?
they don't have the right to prohibit any development of a lot.
No, I mean, I'm not saying that, but I just think to suggest that is there some
Well, there's only-
environmental benefit by staring at a lawn when the adjacent property is losing that benefit? But go ahead. I mean, I don't think it's making a big deal. I just don't think it's that positive of an effect as you're making.
The house next door, which is much a control variance, only has really 4 windows on it that are on the south side.
I think
That's it, and which would be fairly typical.
I think
in that day.
the municipal land use concern with that and where I'm, the point I'm trying to get out there, is that whether we're showing a 5-foot setback, a 6-foot setback, or a 3.3-foot setback on that lot line makes no appreciable difference to the property owner on Dr. James Parker Boulevard.
Yeah.
Because of the reasons that he explained. So I understand your point, but the negative criteria is about, is there a substantial detriment to the public good or to a surrounding property owner? And with all the space between the building that is proposed and the existing building on Dr. James Parker, I think the testimony you heard is there's no detriment. There may be a general detriment to any land being developed anywhere to the surrounding neighbors, and you hear that all the time, but that's not a detriment that the land use law really is concerned with. The land use law is concerned with this variance lead to a substantial detriment. And the testimony from the planner is that a substantial amount of space between those two buildings, the proposed and the existing, whether we conform to your setback requirement or have a 3.3 foot setback, really is no appreciable difference to that property owner. So the variance itself wouldn't create a substantial detriment. Did I sum it up correctly?
Yes, and also remember that if we conform to the setback, side setbacks, the lot is unbuildable. Which is nothing left.
And that's where our hardship
That's
case
the
comes
hardship.
from, because of the unusual narrowness. And the statute specifically says, due to unusual topography or narrowness of a lot. And that's in there specifically for these kinds of lots, these kinds of hardship situation, due to the undersized nature of the lot. And we've satisfied the neighbor on the other side where it is more impactful.
Yeah, well, that's what I was talking about. I'm not talking about the house on James Parker being that impact to me is diminished.
Exactly.
But it's really the impact to the adjacent neighbor, who's not here tonight.
I think with their preference that the house be slid back closer towards the rear and the number, they gave us was 7 feet. We're happy to, stick to that.
The house would then start.
We would also be happy to prohibit fence erection, on the property as well, if the board would find.
I just noticed down the street, there's more of between the two houses, like a 3.5 foot or 4 foot chain link as compared to a 6 foot vinyl, which I think would be somewhat out of character for the neighborhood. But I don't know how the board feels about limiting fence height between the two homes.
There's
I'm
an
not sure.
existing chain link fence that runs from the back of the property. That's on the neighbor's property. There's an existing chain link fence.
Do you know how long that lot's been vacant?
If I look back at my notes from the last meeting, a house was shown at 3 maps I could find, 1908, 1914, and 1922. After that, it's vacant. Now, again, I'm looking at the Sanborn tax maps from a bygone era, but that's really all that we use to see when was there a house on the lot. It definitely was one of them.
Say how big that house was or anything? No, there's nothing.
No, it just says it shows a house there.
You know, the thing I had said too before about putting a smaller one. The first house on Berry Street was a small, non-conforming lot that you had to, wiggle around and do this. Then, you go through that and then to buy another small one and then say, oh, it's gonna be a hardship again. I kind of question why you buy that and have to go through it again to see if, and then saying it's a hardship if you can't build and do whatever, but I think somehow a smaller house should be able to be in there, but I don't know.
Things I have to say is that one of the running trends that's happening in Red Bank now is a lot of house, lots are being chopped. Back lots. And it's creating these very undersized lots. We're seeing it more and more that, the larger lots are now just being chopped up to be about this same size. So we're gonna see more issues where the lots are becoming undersized as we go along.
Why are they doing that?
I'm
And
not-
it's creating a
yeah.
hardship for people,
Right.
buying a home it sets off a whole thing. If they're gonna chop them and then they're irregular and then you can't build on them.
That's why
that
during
people have to
sometimes
go through
during
this.
the subdivision process, they create the building envelope within it so that it's automatic. They don't have to go through the process of constructing on a undersized lot and having to go before the board because the setback's already there and they're non-conforming already. I don't know how long ago, if this was subdivided, and how long ago was it subdivided?
Again, if you want to go back to 1908.
Yeah.
Say it was subdivided, who knows what the regulations were in 1908.
And it's the same size, the survey, whatever, it's the
Yeah.
same size lot, it's not, and.
The other two houses are there.
Mhm.
There was 1, 2, and there was a third house that went away. And so now you have an isolated undersized lot. And to connect you back to Berry Street, and attempt to build a house on Berry Street, the difference was that Berry Street was wider and shallower. So the side yards were less of an issue because it was smaller lot, but it was wider. The thing there had to do with the back, but the back was facing another back that was on Doctor's Park, so it wasn't really as much of an issue because their backyard was really big.
Okay.
So it's really a different context because of that.
Ed, what is the size of the proposed structure compared to its neighbor on the right? The two houses on the right, the scale of the new house compared to those houses that are existing now?
They're about 1,000 square feet.
I know 230 is about 1,000 square feet. And that house was built, I can tell you what year it was built.
Sorry, it's about what square feet?
It's nearly 1,000 square feet.
And the proposed house is how many square feet?
Is now, it's been revised to 1875.
So it does seem that you're gonna have one of the larger homes on the street with, but a smaller lot.
If you go closer down to the end of South Pearl, there are houses there that are in the 2,000 square foot range. There's multi-family houses, there's at least 3 multi.
Bigger.
Two-family, they were built as two-family houses. I'm not saying they're really multi-family. They were built as
problem with that.
And they're definitely at least 2,000-3,000 square feet.
Yeah, bigger, but I'm talking about on the size lot. Like in other words, you have the same size house as a two-family that's on a lot that's probably twice the size of the one that you're proposing.
I'm not sure. I don't think it's that much bigger.
Mhm.
The lots are all fairly small. I remember again from the last hearing.
So I'm torn, I mean, I am a big proponent of single-family homes in town. I'm torn between an oversized house on the street. But the fact that the neighbor is okay is compelling to me. Whether or not she's gonna have a problem with a resale, it seems like she's okay with. And then I guess the next issue is precedent of putting these oversized houses on these lots. It's an undersized lot, maybe it should be an undersized house. Seems to make sense, but I'm curious what the rest of the board thinks, but I am somewhat happy about there being a single family house going up.
Can I chime in?
Sure.
Just speaking, what I think I heard are the facts, right? So the lot's been vacant for over 100 years.
Yes.
No neighbors are objecting. The setbacks are consistent with some of the other houses on similar kind of lots in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
There are some houses that are larger.
Yes.
See, I don't,
Oversized to me, to just push back on Paul a little bit, that's a subjective term. I'm just comparing with other houses. And to me, the overriding things are, frankly, the points I just made. It's putting something on a vacant lot, which to me is a good thing. I'm thinking of greater good also. We haven't talked about people things at all. Here's a guy who wants to bring his mother into town. He loves Red Bank. Isn't that the kind of situation we want when we're developing a Red Bank? That's just my take. And if the only objection is the size of the house, to me, that's in no way outweighs all the other points. I'm just.
Smaller. That's.
Yeah, I like, and I'm just thinking, why wouldn't we say yes, frankly?
The controlling issue in the town is the coverage. And we're below the coverage.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I appreciate, and I think everybody does. You guys have been real accommodative. Go reaching out to the neighbors and things like that, and the board as well. You know, lowering the square footage, being able to deal with the parking, you know, from my perspective, you guys have been accommodative and good citizens here, so.
yeah, so I agree with everything you said. What I was referring to with respect to an oversized house is that we haven't, and this is what I'm talking about, it's literally 80% larger than its neighbor. We have 1,000 square foot house directly to its right, and now you're proposing a house that's 80% bigger. That to me is oversized. That's what I mean by oversized. It's not some gargantuan house by any means, but it's oversized compared to its neighbor.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. But I do agree that, like I said, about,
To me, it's a house,
I like the idea of a single family. I'm just torn with with some of these issues.
to me, 1,875 square feet is not oversized. But that's an
232,
opinion.
230 Pearl Street. I have it as building description as 25 by 99. So that's 2,475 square feet.
That's the house,
That's the house next door.
2,475,
230 South Pearl,
The house.
the house.
The house.
2,475 square feet.
The next one on Berry and South Pearl. That one is. Roughly the same size.
And what was that address?
That was 228 South Pearl and 230 South Pearl.
Got it.
It's roughly the same size as 2475 or 1875.
Sorry.
The same size as what?
25 by 99.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. So it's 2470.
I think
It's a lot.
that's the lot size.
Yeah, they did the wrong thing here.
According to Xylo, it's
Yeah.
952.
Yeah.
But it's 952
The house.
The house.
on 230?
Yeah.
952 square feet. Got it.
So, Mr. Morales, you sent the buy, sell letter to lots 3 and 4 on Dr. Parker's Boulevard. You sent the buy-sell letters to offer to sell them yours if they wanted to purchase it?
Ms. Lee, I sent those letters.
You sent the letter?
Yeah, yes.
And you got no response?
I received a phone call from one of the owners on Dr. James Parker Boulevard. I forget his name. We spoke for a little while. He asked me questions about the land use process and he was interested in learning more about the land use process. He owns a commercial building. I'm not sure which lot number that was, but it's a commercial setup that he had. I think maybe it was a lot for. And he said, if I could use it to intensify my commercial operation, I'd be interested in it. And then he never called me back again. So apparently he wouldn't be able to utilize the lot to intensify his commercial operation.
Because he would have to purchase, well, think of it as a used driveway in there. So you didn't, you say you got some response back, but you didn't pursue that. Because it's not, you don't want the commercial intensity. I get you, I hear
He
you.
expressed a little curiosity.
I hear you.
And I.
He just wanted some free advice.
Pretty much. I said you could call me anytime if he has any other problems.
And you didn't get anything from the corner property. But you'd be willing to sell your lot.
I don't wanna sell nice, I want my mom.
Speaking to the mic, please.
I honestly don't wanna deal with selling again, cause I had to for Berry Street. Cause the lady next door said I'm gonna take away her sunlight, so I felt bad, she's been living there her life, even though there was another house already built there, and just knocked it down. I was gonna build a similar sized house that was gonna be there, but she followed me and said, no, you're gonna take away my sunlight, and now there's nothing there. She just has it empty again.
Well, I mean, again, there's a lot of pleasure in an empty lot. There's a lot of pleasure.
Yeah, I agree with you, but right now, as we speak, she uses it as trucks. There's trucks parked in the lot.
And I guess just for the record, not that this is a substantive thing, but just for the record, I think Kevin, as I recall, that lot, by virtue of the sale, it's not a separate lot, vacant lot anymore. It's now merged into the name, one lot, correct?
Correct. And if you recall, when the lady showed up and, voiced an interest in purchasing the property, she was told that she would have to, if she were serious, she would have to get an appraisal done and then present an offer to us based on that appraisal, and she did that. And so she then she hired a lawyer, she hired an appraiser, they appraised the property. They showed it to me. I found no fault with the appraisal, and I told my client that it was a reasonable offer and they were ready to go.
But we just want to make this one stand on its own, so we're trying to get the right proportion of this house on this lot. And you've got a lot of house on a small lot, and yes, it's how we live today. If we're in New York, that'd be a tiny house, we're talking about, but we're not. We're in Redmond, we're in a small town. And that street was designed probably with little cottages, little workman cottages originally.
They're like turn of the
And
20th
that's,
century construction.
and we're in a different era now, so, we're just trying to figure out how to get you in and out of your backyard. Because you don't know what the neighbor's gonna do at any point in time. It might think it's gonna remain an open yard for you to enjoy the space too.
It is.
I mean, the 3 feet, you can't get a big lawnmower to the backyard. I mean, you got a lot of things going there. And with your skill set, you don't see that you could make that house smaller.
Not in the width direction, we made it smaller, again, almost 300 square feet smaller by reducing the depth.
And could you talk about how you reduced the height and changed the appearance of it? since
Well, based on,
Well, we're already at a tall, skinny house, We're just trying to figure out how to get you to the backyard safely and back in and out. If somebody puts up a chain link fence and not a blank fence, trying to figure that out for you.
I also want you to also recall, if you're concerned about the height, we listened to you too. We reduced the height of the property in addition to reducing the size.
and
Well, I mean, there's a lot going on here. We do have neighbors, even though they seem to be quiet. But that's our job to step up and speak for those who aren't speaking. It's part of what we do here.
Resolution.
Again, she's not here to tell us how satisfied she is. She did come and tell us what she was concerned about. And she, you know, and she used this minute to let you know how concerned she was. So we're just trying to work this out for us because we're obligated to make a decision based on this one. Not what happened with the last one, even though it's hard to remove it from recent memory, we're trying to work on this one.
So let me ask a question. What was the overall size of the original? Was it 25 by 44 feet?
I'm sorry.
That's the one I-
The original application, what was this, the size of the house was 25 by 44, right? So.
I'm sorry, 25 by 44, and now it's 25 by 40.
Let me check.
How does that come out to 300 square feet?
It's 20 by 44.
If I could interject my notes, I have 2119 was the square footage and now it's 18.
Yeah, 20.
What, how does,
I'm just, those are the numbers.
I'm just losing, I just don't understand if you've only made it 4 feet shorter. Times 20 feet, that's not,
The front door, rather than having the stoop outside, we injected it. So we took space out of the foyer.
oh, so the house is
But
only,
it's, imagine a rectangle that has a chunk taken out.
oh, okay. That's what you took it, you still have the front doors, but now you don't have the.
So it's a 4 feet times 2 stories. And. Oh.
Oh, this is old.
Attic up. Those 4 things together.
Oh, this is the front one.
I love the fact that you want to put, that we're not dealing, you know, with apartments coming in, no parking and whatnot. I do. The issue is the size and can it be made to go a little, it's never going to conform. I know that. I do know that way the lot is, but I just still think there's a way maybe to get it a little smaller. That's what I'm wrestling with. But I love the fact that you want to have a single family home on that lot.
Agree with, we looked at, the two houses next door, 228 and 230. One is 972 square feet and the other is just under 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So they're much smaller houses.
Yes, and again, not to.
You're speaking to the mic?
Can't hear you. I can't hear you. Okay.
Not to belabor the point that Ms. Lee was bringing up. You have to remember, the house next door was built, could be built 150 years ago. I mean, it's a very, very different world.
And when was the last time you were asked to design a house for under 1,000 square feet?
1920.
Certainly practice in 1920.
Sorry, hold on.
But seriously, it's a serious point. Do you think that there's any kind of market in 2025 for a 1,000 square foot construction, 1,000 square feet house?
No, there's nothing. And that's why there's. I've been practicing. It's not just even in the United States, it's other places.
Well, luckily, we only have to think about that.
Yeah, we don't even think about it as this little thing.
We don't think about that one little.
But it does bring that, I mean, that's a positive thing about developing a lot. It does provide a relatively affordable house into town.
well,
It's your testimony, all done. Because I think at this point, we could talk about this all night long. But at some point, we gotta make a decision whether we're gonna vote for or against approving this application.
So may I sum up unless?
Absolutely, absolutely.
I think you have to open it to the public just to
Yeah,
cross all the Ts, but maybe after you go.
why don't you sum up your stuff, then I'll ask for comments from the board and the public.
Sure, so I'm going to start by stealing Mr. Kennedy's thunder, because I know what he's going to advise you, because I've been up here and watched him advise you many times, and I've read many of his brilliantly written resolutions. And he's gonna tell you all about the Dallmeyer standard, and this is from, Mr. Kennedy's, one of his resolutions. The applicant should be required to carry the burden of proof, as in all other cases, as to both the positive and negative criteria. Now, we covered that by explaining the hardship of the narrow lot. The municipal land use law itself discusses narrow lots as a basis for hardship and the approval for a hardship variance. Negative criteria is demonstrated by the fact that, testimony you heard that the side yard setback, issue that we've been discussing has no bearing on the neighbor, for Dr. James Parker. It does have a bearing on the neighbor at 230, but we've been able to satisfy her by proposing or by acceding to her request that we slide the house 7 feet further back. That would alleviate the problems that she felt were associated with the side yard setback issue on her side. And reconfiguring her stoop as well, which corrects a condition that currently exists whereby anybody walking down those steps will be trespassing on someone else's property. Once we reconfigure those steps, we're correcting a little bit of an issue with that property. The applicant should demonstrate that efforts were made to bring the property into conformity with the zoning ordinance by attempting to acquire adjacent property or offering to sell the non-conforming property to adjacent owners. So we've done that. That's in evidence. Submit detailed plans of the proposed house, which describes its appearance and prove its compliance with building code. You've heard architectural testimony about that. The applicant should attempt, where applicable, to demonstrate compliance with the use, side yard and setback requirements and location of the house, among other homes on small tracts with similar frontages. You also heard testimony about the neighboring properties, other properties down the street, which have the same distance between buildings as what we're proposing, and similar size buildings, maybe not immediately next door, but very nearby on a very small street. Attempt to demonstrate that the proposed use does not violate any traditional zoning purposes such as light, air, and open space. I think it could have been argued that with the house pushed up the way it's drawn up right now, I think that concern might be reasonable. But the fact that we and the neighbor with Pat Mena's involvement agreed to slide it back, that does alleviate the one instance where light, air, and open space could have been called into question. By moving it back, you're providing air, light, and open space for both properties. So Mr. Kennedy's advice, I predict, would be that the board should evaluate the testimony to determine whether it should elicit additional information to supplement the record. And that's why we really will answer them, to your satisfaction. The shotgunning of the rooms, I think, I'm not sure that everybody's on the same page about that, but you heard his answer about that. And, he's an architect, he knows what he's doing. He's been accepted as an expert before this board many times. The board should make specific findings of fact based on the record to support its conclusion. Consider whether in lieu of denying an application, it could approve it subject to reasonable conditions, which would modify the proposal and obviate or minimize any negative impact. And you've done that. You've done the property drawing board, we look at the drawing board, we reduced the height, we reduced the square footage. We resolved the problem with the neighbor and satisfied the neighbor. And so the board took action, sent us on, on an assignment to improve this, to obviate or minimize any negative impacts, and we've done it. And finally, this is Kevin Kennedy's resolution. Remember the comprehensive review, the facts and outright denial may amount to compensation, thus requiring condemnation by the municipality. And that's where you get into like regulatory and condemnation actions. Not that, we anticipate that at all, but that is the kind of the overriding reason for hardship variances in the first place, right? Because the whole idea is land should be utilized. Land that's not utilized, like this land hasn't been for 100 years, is wasted land. And the policy in this state is to utilize land, develop land, put it to use, put housing where, housing is desperately needed. So, this application, while maybe a little bit bigger than what you would ideally wish to see, is a serious application, probably the most wholesome land use variance application I've ever been involved in. And, as Mr. Horowitz said, this is kind of what it's all about. And it may not be perfect in your eyes, but I think it's certainly meritorious. It has merit. It's good for this town. It's great for that property. The only person that had expressed objection has been satisfied. And even though the property might be slightly larger than what you wish you might see, you might not ever find anybody to build that house you have in mind, because that's the market. You might go another 100 years before somebody comes along and says, let me build a 1,000 square foot house here. It hasn't happened so far. So I think Mr. Morales' application is very, very worthy of your consideration for approval. And I wish you would act favorably upon it. Thank you.
Can I just add one last question we didn't talk about, but there is a current driveway apron there. Are you going to remove that and put a curb in the sidewalk?
Yeah, the proposal is to remove the apron, curb and sidewalk.
Okay.
Any other
comments by the board?
Chair, I just had one item on my letter that I wanted to confirm. Page 4, 2.3, the AC condenser. You had testified in the prior hearing that you were going to put it in the rear of the, adjacent to the deck.
Face the house that's on Dr. Sparta Boulevard.
Are you putting appropriate screening around it? You will comply with that. Okay. Thank you.
Any comments from the
public on this application, or any questions for any of these gentlemen from the public? Okay, well, somebody like to make a motion to either deny this application?
I just have a procedural question. There's 6 of us here. What would it require for approval? And
It's not a.
what happens if it's tied?
Tie vote does not pass. Tie vote is
Does it
defeated.
defeat it? Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, can I just make one,
Please.
a quick legal? Kevin Asadi was quoting me, so I'm gonna say he was brilliant. No, but I was quoting the Judge Serpentelli's Dahlmeyer case, and Mr. Asadi was 100% correct on the law. He referenced that Dahlmeyer case. We've referenced it in other resolutions, and I think that the issue, as you all know, and the debate's gonna come about applying the facts to the law. And that has to be integrated, which is always the case. And you'll recall the resolution that we passed earlier tonight. We had a big discussion last meeting about other relators, but that's, we're applying the facts. So the case law suggests that we do have to be sensitive and let the applicant build something, because to outright deny under these circumstances would be, or could be, tantamount or could expose the town to potential claims for inverse condemnation. And remember, condemnation is when the town or the state or the county takes your land to make the street wider or make a park. Inverse condemnation is when you basically zone the property into inutility. You don't do anything, but you make it so that the applicant can't develop. So again, I think the key is, and what the discussion seems to be focusing on, is we have to be sensitive to the fact that if they do what the law requires them to do, the law suggests that we have to let them build something, but it clearly says maybe not as big as you want, maybe not as tall as they want, maybe not as wide, maybe not with those setbacks. So those are the things that where the discussion and the debate is, and what you're all going to be talking about and have been talking about is can it be improved setbacks or whatever your particular issue is? And is it functional to do that? Is it marketable to do that? Is it buildable to do that? Is someone gonna live there to do that? And again, I think Mr. Asadi said, you know, in these situations, it's, you know, very rarely do we have a perfect scenario, because a perfect scenario is when someone comes here with a complying lot and a complying application and but you know, we want to get the best case scenario, and you've all said, and I think you all have the right interest at heart about, hey, what can we do? So that's the discussion. And now again, the hard part, it's turned over to all of you.
Well, again, I
I think we've, about everybody
is in favor of something being built
on
on
this property. I don't think there's any denying that. In
my perspective.
It is just, you know, we start allowing
Oversized buildings
on undersized lots all over
Red Bank,
and
you know,
we're,
it's gonna be a mess. So I don't know, that's
that's my perspective.
so. Does anybody like to make a motion to approve or deny this application?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Would somebody like to second that?
No, I will second it, and which may come as a surprise to some of the members of the board. And the reason is that I feel that as a board, we have, not all of us, but we have many times bent over backwards for or for developers all over this town to build high rises with 30, 40, 50, 100, 200 units, 400 units, right, going down by transit, couple hundred across from Vera Vina, 30, 40 across from the atrium, right? Wallace Street, Mechanic Street. So as much as I do think it's oversized, I'm really thrilled about a single family. I wish there were more going up. I think you made some adjustments. I think it's the positive outweighs the negative, although I'm not 100% thrilled with it. I will second the motion.
And Mr. Chairman, I have taken the liberty of writing down a couple of potential conditions. I'll defer to you as to whether anyone needs to read them. And then if we do read those potential conditions, what we've done sometimes in the past, it does not have to be done here, but sometimes if you're so inclined, you can ask the applicant, do you want to vote tonight? So do you want me to read the potential conditions or?
Sure.
All right, so I'm just gonna go through them real quickly because some of the standard ones, compliance with all the promises, commitments, and representations the team made tonight, compliance with the T&M Associates Review Memorandum. Jackie, any reason that grading and drainage would need to be submitted to your office, reviewed and approved?
They should be submitted as part of the building
Okay.
permit process.
And as part of building, and then compliance with affordable housing rules, regulations, contributions. Kevin, there's usually a 24-month time frame as to when if the application is approved and when you get a building permit or any agreed upon extension, and compliance with outside approvals, with the caveat, standard caveat, to the extent the nature of the application or the nature of the relief materially changes as a result of those outside approvals, you would need to come back. Now, some of these, I might be overstepping my bounds. I took a look at what we talked about last time. So last time we talked about attic not being utilized as a bedroom. Is that something that we need to reference here?
The attic is not a bedroom.
Okay, and then we had talked about last time, and Mr. O'Neill brought it up tonight, window panes and things like that. So do we have any, Jackie, special regulations as long as it's over 3 feet? I mean, we don't have to make any special regulations about, because you couldn't have a window if it was a less than a 3-foot setback. So, I mean, are we just saying compliance with building and construction code? Okay. And no further expansion, intensification, absent further approval of the board, sidewalks and curbs. We had last time talked about planting some small trees and shrubs. Is that on the table right now? Do we have to worry about that or no? No, okay. And then Jackie, last time there was some discussion, I wrote down on my notes about, again, it's not part of tonight's hearing, but about the wall has to be fire rated. Is that anything?
That was testimony from the architect
The first time?
relating to the setback. What?
Yeah,
Can you list the variances that were?
yes.
And also,
What happens is if you're less than 5 feet, you have to fire rate the wall, which means that the materials that you use on the side walls will have to be fire.
Okay. And then speaking of that, with the smaller setbacks that are proposed, are there any fire suppression systems that we have to talk about, or is that just building and construction?
That would be building.
Okay, and then the air conditioning condenser is located in a compliant location. And screening that air conditioning condenser perpetually. Now, last time, I at least wrote down, I don't know if this is a discussion. Do we require utilities to be underground, or is that just something that modern world does, or we don't regulate that? Okay. The pressed curb will be closed. Now, Mr. Chairman, I think we just need, for the record, at the outset of the meeting, Kevin Asadi started saying, hey, if you want, I can move this house back 7 feet to have a front setback of 19 feet. Is that what the motioner and seconder are looking for?
I would say yes.
Okay. And I don't know why I had this, but concrete pavers for the walkway, we had discussed that last time. Is that nothing we have to worry about?
Don't.
That's a question for them.
Okay, did I make that up last time, or was that a discussion point?
Was, but they're not showing anything.
Walkway right now.
Okay, so no walkway, so we can do that. And basement would not be utilized as living space, correct?
Yeah, correct.
No driveway, no front yard parking. Remove the curb cut and complete sidewalk. To municipal standards, I guess we say. And then the no tree removal, the height is 26 feet. And
Kevin, you might want to add the staircase neighbor needs to be rotated towards.
okay, so now I'm gonna say, here it is, good timing. So per your conversation with Mr. Menner, you're gonna reconstruct the stoop so that the steps will land or be directed to towards the street and
Parker Boulevard.
Parker Boulevard. And then we also, the steps will orient towards Parker Boulevard, and you're gonna change the steps so as to not require the trespass when you leave. And then, Jackie, I'd written something down here, now it's 9 feet, will be 4 feet. What was that about? Was that this platform for the stair, the
Yeah.
Was 0.9 feet
0.9 feet, I'm sorry,
and it.
my decimal,
would be 4.
4 feet, okay. And
That's not the size, that's a distance from the property line.
distance
Mhm.
from the steps to the property line?
Correct.
And which property line?
The next door neighbor's steps that are gonna be re-oriented.
Okay, and then I guess we should clarify, we had some discussion about not allowing a fence along the side of the home or regulating the type or size. Is that part of the motion?
I mean, from my point of view, I think a 6-foot fence there would be a negative attribute for the neighbors. So I would suggest.
Yes, I agree.
A standard, nothing taller than a standard chain link that is already there. And the only other correction, Kevin, I think you said that he was gonna change the steps to face James Parker Boulevard, but it's currently facing James Parker, so it's gonna face Pearl.
They're gonna face South Pearl.
Yeah.
Steps to face Pearl. Got it. Thank you.
Right, okay.
And then, so with the fence, it's nothing larger than a what foot chain link fence? 4 foot? And that's just between the two homes?
Yeah.
Okay. And Chairman, we're getting there.
Okay.
Reconfigure the stoops. Okay, and remove the existing apron and put in the curb. So, Kevin, are those conditions, in addition to our general standard conditions, acceptable to you?
Yes.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, I think you wanted a quick recap, and maybe I would defer to Kevin, as to the specific variances that are needed. Unless, Jackie, you know them offhand. Put you on the spot.
The variances,
Yeah,
to parking variance,
2 required versus 0 proposed.
correct. And I believe it's just a side yard setback
Also,
and the front yard,
So side yard, 3 feet is proposed and
3.25 feet versus 10.
3.3 or 3.25, is it, which one is it?
3 foot, 3 inches or 3,
All right, 3.3 versus 10 feet's required.
correct,
And then the front yard setback, what is required
25,
and what is proposed?
9.
19.
19. Okay. And then, of course, the lot area, basically. So were there any other variances, Mr. O'Neill?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay. So. That's it. I mean, if Kevin, are you looking for a vote tonight? Again, that's actually only a question. I mean, you guys can vote if you want. Doesn't not dependent on the applicant's answer to that.
We're waiting.
And thanks for indulging me for getting all that list out. That'll help with the resolution.
Mr. Kennedy, is it possible to take straw poll?
I mean, we don't really take straw polls, but I mean, people have commented, and if the chairman wants, he can ask for comments, but further comments, but we don't have to do that, but it's up to the chair.
Well,
Anybody have
comments,
something?
how they're feeling about this?
You looking at me?
I'll comment.
I think that we are trying to get this house built on this lot. We don't want Mr. O'Neill working another 100 years. But I feel like we're not getting any downsides of this house. I think it's just shifted like a monopoly building up and down the lot. I don't think you're really downsizing. I think you can make it a little bit smaller, a little more accommodating. And as a straw vote goes, I can't see supporting it without you. Like I said, you got a 3-story house, 2.5-story house. It's a big house on that lot. I'm not comfortable with it.
I think I'm the same.
Same way,
Definitely, there should
be a single family house on that
property,
but again,
on
on
lots that are under,
undersized, to have a house this big,
it's not,
not something
I think we're looking
to do.
in town is put these big houses on these small
Lots, I'm not really in favor of it.
I know I'm not in favor of the size, definitely, but I'm struggling because I agree very much with Paul about, a single family, and everybody's saying this, a single family home. And there's been a lot of building here, and I'd much rather see a single family home, but I just feel it can be taken down. I still think it's just really big. I mean, are you even gonna be able to plant anything around the house, do any, I mean, seems to me it's just gonna be like a house sitting, a big house sitting on this little lot. And I'm struggling with that part of it.
Still meets a lot coverage standard. You know, there's enough lot coverage left over. 8% of the lot is available for lawn space, gardening, flowers, bushes, you name it. It complies with that.
Like the other members of the committee have said, we would love to see a single family home developed on this lot. I too struggle with the size of the current application. I think it's too big. Struggle.
So, would you like us to take a vote at this time? I'll leave it up to you. I mean, if it's up to me, I'll say we'll vote on it. I'm
Regarding making a house smaller. How much more smaller would you like us to, because we tried doing that the first time when we first came. We tried, you guys expressed that you wanted it to be smaller. We made it smaller this time and just to get a better idea of exactly what you're thinking.
Yeah, can I try to answer that real quick? Sure. So, your neighbor house, the two houses next to you are 1,000 square feet and you're at 1,850. I mean, you can't get a 1,500 square foot house there. I mean, can you not build a very similar house to what's right next door to you or what's adjacent to you, or is that just not gonna work for you?
Yeah, I haven't been in the houses next door, but I live not very far from here in what was a 1,500 square foot house. It's 1,500 now. It was probably 1,200 when I bought it. And it was a 2-bedroom with very small bedroom house. It had a kitchen and a living room. That was also a dining room. There was 1 bathroom, and that was it.
Yeah.
When we get down to that size house, and that's what you're getting. Think about an oversized 1-bedroom apartment or a very small 2-bedroom apartment. That's 1,000 square feet. Your ordinance doesn't allow an apartment of 2 bedrooms to be under 1,000 square feet. That's correct.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying like more like 1,500. What does 1,500 get you on that lot? You know,
Well,
is it more scale compared to your
Well,
neighbors?
What's gonna happen is that you're not gonna have 2 bedrooms, more than 2 bedrooms. And so the question I would pose to the board is how big a variance is it to make the attic a bedroom? Which is something that is legal, building codes and everything else, it's a local ordinance perspective. But if you allow that to happen, we could make the house narrower, because we wouldn't be at the burden of trying to put 3 bedrooms on the second floor.
Well, we understand that, and maybe it's not a 3-bedroom house that goes on that lot. It's a lot of 2-bedroom house. First part of my house is 2 bedrooms.
Ed, when was the last time you designed a 2-bedroom house, new construction?
Never,
Never.
not in 40 years.
Not 1 in 4 years. So what and I don't mean to be combative, and I hope I'm not coming off that way.
When you ask for a straw poll, you got a straw poll.
Yes.
We're trying,
But
maybe you need to go back and have your client rethink it and then come back to us.
Well, we did that once and we reduced it.
You moved.
Or ask us to vote.
The client,
No, we reduced.
neighbor then said, let's move it back 7 feet.
No.
We're right back where we were,
The building was reduced by 300 square feet. The height was reduced by several feet. The bulk and shape of the house was modified to reduce the appearance of bulk. We've done all the things that you asked for, but it's arbitrary to say, well, 1,800 is too much, but 1,500, that's the gold standard. It's very arbitrary and it's an impossible mark.
But you can build a house for 1,500 with 3 bedrooms. I know that. They exist
Not according to
Not on
the.
that lot.
on narrow lots, though, on narrow lots.
So.
If you go longer.
Mr. Mass is saying maybe it's not a two, and I'm sorry, but if you'll allow me. You're saying that maybe a two-bedroom house doesn't go there. Well, it's a vacant lot. An architect with 40 years' experience, who you know very well, is telling you that not once in his 40-year career has he been asked to design a two-bedroom house. So who's going to come along? You all said that you want a single-family house on this lot. You all said it. And you also heard that nobody has ever asked this architect with all this experience in Red Bank to design a two-bedroom house. And you've also heard that you can't design a three-bedroom house on this lot, making it more narrow than what it already is. So what you're saying is that the only kind of application that you would approve for this lot is an application that will never come. So you're going to have this lot that will never be utilized. That is an inverse condemnation. The evidence is on the record, and I do urge the board to consider that. And look, like I said before, the 300 square feet to you up there really doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean a lot. It's an arbitrary number. But to the family and the people that would live in a house to have 300 more square feet, you all know what that's like. And to sit up here and say, well, we're not going to let some future family have 300 extra square feet of living space when it's the only proposed development you've had for this lot. It's, to me, I can't make sense of it.
Mr. O'Neill,
I got one question for you.
Oh, sure.
what's the
Average size of a three-bedroom apartment.
in an apartment building?
From 13 to 1,500 square feet,
12.
maybe, but I don't think so.
Okay,
I
Just,
just want to make one other point here. If we would agree to not finish the attic, we're at 1,500 square feet.
So when I said 1,500, I wasn't trying to set a gold standard. I think you said, Mr. Asadi. I wasn't trying to set a gold standard by any means. I think the point was that you have two neighboring properties that families live in, right? So to suggest that no family's gonna move in, well, there's families living in here for 100 years.
Nobody's going to build it. No
Well,
one's building it.
that remains to be seen, but I don't know how long the property was on the market for. So I don't want to go down that road necessarily because we don't know the opportunity how long has it been an opportunity to build it? I mean, he bought it. Anyway, I don't think we need
I
to
think-
delve into that.
I think he would have designed one in his career if there was a market for that kind of house anywhere, as a new construction.
But I'll go back to, not to interrupt, but I'll go back to, I know there's no gold standard, but you're saying, well, houses are 1,500 square feet. Well, if you take away the attic, the size of the house is 1,500 square feet, which are all over town.
if you take away the attic, the height of the house is.
Reduced seriously.
No, I mean, take away as a finished attic. So if you say, well, it's not a finished attic, it's just attic where put Christmas decorations, then the house is 1,500 square feet of usable space.
Would that
That's
make
what it
it
is. That's
smaller?
why this idea of making it smaller becomes more and more difficult, because the first and second floors together are not any way oversized. In my opinion, the rooms are, if you look at the drawings, the rooms are not large at all. A dining room or a dining area has to be a certain size to fit a table. A bedroom has to be a certain size to fit the normal bedroom furniture. Master bedroom has to be slightly larger because there's two people in it. Bathrooms are regulated by stocks. There's almost no circulation in the building. So you can't really make it smaller until you start to eliminate rooms. And I think the rooms we have are the typical rooms anybody would have in a three-bedroom house.
But
That's my opinion, but again, if there's a number.
Well, if you don't have an attic, you don't need a stairway going up there.
And that gives you more space and I'm just lost.
Well, in other words, in the way the square footage is counted, the finished attic is 700 square feet. You don't finish the attic. You reduce the size of the house. And again, I'm not looking at that, I'm 500 square feet. House now, it's a 1,500.
So you're just talking about counting of the square footage.
Just saying
Yeah.
that that in the resolution, the attic is gonna remain unfinished.
But the size of the building would be exactly the same.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly the same.
Same.
So that, when you talk about 18 to 1,500, and I know 1,500 is not a magic number, but it's about the attic, which is gonna exist anyway. It's not gonna change the bulk of the house, it's just going to be occupied and have windows that conform to the code, and that's it. And the stair becomes a real stair, it's not a pull-down stair.
Mr. O'Neill, could I ask you, have you designed other homes on lots this size or smaller?
Yes.
Okay, and,
Some of these,
okay, and what size lots, if you remember, I mean, it's a tough question.
they're usually undersized they're less than a quarter acre, which is about 10,000 square feet. But they usually are not this narrow and deep. This lot is much deeper than other houses I've designed on, but it's the narrowness that's the issue. Even Berry Street, as Ms. Hogan pointed out, was a house that was smaller, but it was because it could be wider. A layout allowed the program to fit, the program rooms to fit without an issue, and it didn't have to be as big. But the problem here is it's narrow, so to get bedrooms on the second floor, that's really what starts the tail that wags the dog.
So, Mr. Chairman, what I would just sort of say, go against one thing my friend Kevin Asadi said. So I don't think that this is inverse condemnation. I mean, I know, and he can think, and reasonable minds can differ on that. But what I want to say is, in the context of a variance and in the context of the quasi judicial nature that we have to act, all relevant things matter. So the size of the lot matters, the size of the home matters, the nature and extent of the variance relief matters, the compatibility with the neighborhood matters, the context matters, the setbacks matter. I mean, when you're sometimes, Jackie, I agree, sometimes when fires happen, with very small setbacks, it's easy for fires to spread to nearby setbacks. So that all matters. The construction code requirements matter. So I think everything, I'm 100% fine if you all vote to approve it, or if you don't approve it, or if you approve it with conditions. But I just think that, just for the record, I respectfully don't think that this is an automatic case that if it doesn't approve, that we've basically committed it to an inverse condemnation, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, so you want us to vote? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Roll call.
Ray Mess,
No, for the reasons I stated.
okay, Eileen Hogan,
I'm gonna say no.
all right, Sharon Lee,
No.
Ben Slight,
No.
Paul Cagno,
Yes.
and Eugene Horowitz.
Yes.
Okay, application.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Yes.
I mean,